Namaste. Good evening, everybody. Welcome to our Anamkara meditation program. With all my heart and with all my love, I welcome you to our program this evening. Special evening for Anamkara. This is, our 23rd anniversary after 9/11 and the tragic events of that time, and such a great need in the New York metropolitan area, especially, but elsewhere, for being able to find a place of peace, a place of refuge. A place where we could practice together to calm the mind and keep the heart open, and that's quite a challenge. So Anamkara, the ancient Celtic term or a Gaelic term actually, that means friend of the soul, and so we started Anamkara as a way to be able to offer free meditation programs and make free teachings about meditative practices available to everyone, and to be able to create the community where we could get together. It was nice back then. Of course, we were getting together in person, and did that in person up until, just 4 years ago. So we missed that, but so great to be able to get together in this virtual space. But Anamkara was founded as a resource of making resources available around meditation and practice, community. We started out in a little Methodist church, allowed us to use one of their rooms 2 nights a week because we used to meet on Tuesdays and Thursdays. Did that for a number of years. And it wasn't until 2005 where we had a center on Guard Hill Road in Bedford with Michael Finkelstein's center of Sunraven. He invited Anamkara to have its center there and be able to do meditation programs and retreats that we were able to do there as well. So we just kept, being able to expand what we offered in terms of courses and retreats and the weekly programs, always to support people in being able to see past the mind, both in terms of for ourselves individually and the relief it brings to be able to see that we have a mind, but we're not the mind, that we can then work on the mind and transform it, change the state that it's in, but also so that we can support that in the world, because in many ways, not much has changed since 9/11, sadly. So much hate, so much violence, so much discord in the world. And we still have to be able to do the practices and walk it into the world. And that's one of the absolute keys for being what we are, householders, people living in the world. So in the yoga tradition, they're called householder and householder sadhana, doing practices and to live in the world, and that our everyday life, our family life, our relationships, our work, everything is the crucible for transformation. And that's really part of the essence of the tantra traditions, out of which Kundalini is an expression of that this innate power of consciousness helps to transform our view of the world so that we can see through the eyes of our highest wisdom center, our highest knowledge, our highest self, the divine within, so that it transforms how we look at the world and how we look at others. It transforms how we interact with the world and others. It helps to get the poor automaticity of reactivity and amygdala hijack, and these terms that have been developed in research and looking at what happens in the brain when the fight, flight, freeze response takes over. Well, that's all conditioned mind. And unfortunately, most of the time, we're just going from, one set of automatic responses to another, seeking where's freedom, where's change. Well, it's not out there. It's through transforming what's going on inside. And so we transform the mind, we transform the body, we transform through practices and through the power of grace, relying on the power of grace, and how practices like mantra we've been talking a lot about, been discussing the Shiva Sutras, often talking about Kundalini. These are ways of being able to talk about what's that innate source of the power of consciousness that transforms and reveals reveals the truth of who we are, so that we can see past the mind. Because for most of the time, most people, if you ask them who they are, it's everything identified with the mind, body, roles we play, everything like that. There's no sense of who am I without all that. And that's really what the yogic and Eastern traditions, Buddhist traditions as well, and meditative traditions, I'd say mystics of all great traditions, aim at opening the doors so that we can see truly who we are and who others are, and then act accordingly. Because right now, we too often act out of that fear-driven, contracted consciousness we call the ordinary mind, the ego mind, and not from being informed by our own divine self. So we founded Anamkara to pass on the kinds of teachings and practices that support people in knowing that for themselves, knowing it directly, and then being empowered to live it into the world and live it into relationships. So we've been doing that now for 23 years with the wonderful support of all you folks and many more who aren't able to come to satsang but support us in other ways. Sort of our extended sangha through the Anamkara e-newsletter, well, that goes out around the world, and so we, good 1,000 people each week are interacting with the Anamkara through that, through the videos that we put up for free on the YouTube channel. So again, our mission was always to make meditative practices freely available to everyone. And so we do that through the live programs on the Thursday nights twice a month, and then all the other kinds of programs and things that we try to offer through the videos and the newsletter, etc. So I want to thank you all for coming and showing your support, making donations and helping to support our work so we can continue that, and look forward to being able to continue to serve. Now we're beginning our 24th year, and still the exact same mission. How can we make the power of meditation, the practices of meditation, the profound teachings around meditation freely available to everyone, and from various traditions, So we focus on the Eastern traditions. From time to time we dip into some of the Western traditions, but we're not wedded to just one tradition or one dogma, because the truth is all these traditions, they bring us to what the highest is, and then all these differences dissolve. That's the whole point. Dissolve differences, dissolve otherness. Otherness is mind-born reality, the reality of the infinite, what you will see or have seen or will continue to see through the eyes of wisdom, through the eyes of knowing, is the unity, our profound, not just connectedness, our oneness. That's why it really is that if we harm another, we're harming ourselves. And so to be able to know that and experience that directly, it's a beautiful concept, it's a beautiful understanding. So we can adopt that, act on that, bring our actions into alignment with that. But we want the juice, we want the direct experience. We want to live that. And so that's where practice comes in. And that's meditative practices, those are contemplative practices. And there's also, the Dharma practices, living dharmically in the world. And we see now, and this is another insight from Eastern traditions, where they refer to this age that we're in as Kali Yuga. Kali meaning dark, not the goddess Kali. She's called Kali because she's black. But Kali is dark, black. So this age, in the Eastern tradition, and especially the Hindu tradition, we'll talk about 4 ages that we cycle through over and over again. And it starts out with Satya Yuga, where things are all in aligned with the highest. People live from that, they know that, they live that into the world. Entropy sets in, things degrade until you get to the 4th age, where, that's where we are now, the dark age. So people aren't automatically living in alignment. They're not knowing the truth of who they are. They need teachings. In Satya Yuga, there were no teachers or teachings. Everybody knew. So teachers, teaching, scriptures, they don't come in until a couple of ages later, because the forgetting of the truth of who we are deepens. And so we have a hard time remembering. We need reminders. We need practices. We need teachings. We need contemplations in order to cut through this self-forgetting. Self with a capital S, the divine self. And so this is an age where that's particularly important. It's symbolized, and a beautiful symbol that comes out again, the Hindu tradition, where the great cow, the Mother Cow of Dharma, that Dharma is Dharma Shakti. It's a power of the Divine Mother. So the cow, the Divine Feminine, who feeds and gives and nurtures all humanity, all beings really. In Satya Yuga, she's said to be standing strong on all four legs. But with each successive age, with the diminishment of Dharma, she loses a leg. So here we are in the fourth age, Kali Yuga. Poor cow of Dharma has only one leg. Can't stand on one leg. And so out of that is a profound insight that, yes, that's a reflection of where things are, but it's also a direction of what to do, what we need to do. We need to stand for Dharma. We become the other three legs. We stand for Dharma. So it's up to us to walk Dharma into the world, to walk a vision of how we can live together with compassion, with equal vision, with equality, at a time when you can see, just in the political world, the degradation, the hate, the blaming immigrants, the lies, the endless lies, the lack of accountability. I have a whole party wants to lie and have no accountability. They don't even want fact checks. They want to break laws, even, insurrection and literally murderous acts of treason, and not be held accountable. That's Kali Yuga. And that means the individuals doing that are so divorced from the divinity that they truly are, that they act in these horrible ways. Because for every one of us, the farther we are from the divine nature of the truth of who we are, the more we inflict suffering on ourselves and others. We act out of that black hole of emptiness and try and fill it by consuming indiscriminately, by seeking domination, control, exploitation. Those things do not arise from the fullness, the sublime abundance of the truth of who we are. You have enough love in your heart to drown the world in love. If we all knew that and it was lived from that, we wouldn't have this. That's the ideal. So standing for Dharma means standing for that. And it's active. It's not passive. You stand, you support Dharma, you walk it into the world. That means we walk it into the halls of power. That means we take on, political institutions. That means we take on the kinds of a-dharma, lack of Dharma. A-dharma means non-dharma. That is pervading our world around us and destroying the environment, destroying lives for others. So we take that on. We don't sit and go, oh, I just have to, chant and become peaceful. Yeah, chant and become peaceful. And then, empowered by that, you develop the strength of a steady state of wisdom to walk it into the world, to be able to take on these kinds of issues, see through it. Because, it's being able to see both the divinity that's inherent in all beings, and see where, behaviors, attitudes, actions that are way off, they have to be stopped, they have to be contained. And that is part of how we walk Dharma into the world, is supporting that, making sure that our country, our governments, our representatives are aligned with a higher vision that is inclusive and embracing. So all of that is part of sadhana in everyday life, right? It's karma yoga. It's the integration of the highest understandings, the highest truths into everyday life. That is also one of the hallmarks of Kali Yuga. That it wasn't a time to just retreat permanently into an ashram or a meditation cave, or just go off and be enlightened by yourself and enjoy the bliss of that state. No, it's time that it's fully inclusive, that the embrace of all beings is held in that. That was particularly expressed by Buddha, saying that, in this age, in this turning of the wheel of Dharma, in Mahayana Buddhism, one of the primary vows is that we do all the practices for the benefit of all beings. That we vow to keep coming back till all beings in all planes, in all realities are free. That the very motivation for practice is no longer just a selfish one. Oh, I want, eternal bliss for myself. No, I want eternal bliss for everybody. I want everybody to know. I want everybody. Not enough. Not enough. Not enough. If I've been given experience of that, that's nice. What does that do for you? What does that do for humanity? What does that do for the poor creatures in the ocean that are dying from pollution and global warming? This is why we have that motivation to be present for all, to support all. We're all in this together because, frankly, there is no other. So if any being is suffering, it's part of me is suffering. If my hand was hurting, would I ignore my hand, go, oh, tough, that hand belongs to something else, not my problem? No, we're all that connected. So living that into the world is what we're called on in this age, in Kali Yuga, to stand for Dharma, to walk for Dharma. That is what will bring about that kind of harmonious living together. Because clearly the paradigm that humanity has been living out for the last several thousand years. I mean, archaeological studies and everything that go back to the earlier civilization that was really based on the divine feminine and on the goddess was very different. But as that pendulum shifted and then got mixed up with a very toxic masculine kind of perspective of domination and exploitation and control, that's what we've been seeing unfolding and getting worse and worse. So that's why many talk about this is the time for the return of the goddess. What does that mean? Oh, the return of what do we think of as the divine feminine, of the great mother who loves all, embraces all, nurtures all. The mother cow, the cow of Dharma, nurturing and giving her milk to all. That we become embodiments of that, that we walk that truth into the world, that we feel, experience, know it with every cell of our body and walk that into the world. That's what we're called upon to do. So even as we delight in practices and become engaged in mantra and meditation, and it does help to calm the mind, soothe and heal the body, and in so doing, calm all the energies that are typically so distracting that we get lost in all that content, all that reactivity of mind and body, and we don't see the infinitude of the expanse of being awareness suffused with rapturous, loving compassion that holds it all, So that too is what we're invited to know, so that we're both becoming more skillful at being able to ease the mind, ease the body. They don't have to be on autopilot and all their reactivity and all their buttons so easily pushed, so easily manipulated by news, by fake news, real news, all kinds of things. Family members people who know how to trigger us and push their buttons. That's all just talking about the conditioned mind and how we are such victims of that. So yoga said, well, we can't change everybody in the world. We're empowered to change our inner state so it becomes impervious to the world. In terms of that reactivity of being provoked, but it doesn't change that then our natural state of our highest being, which is love, pure, all-embracing love, well, we become transparent to that. The mind and body become servants of that. They begin to shine through us more and more because it's not just the ordinary mind filling what's going to come through our actions, our thoughts, our speech, all of those things. So this integrative practice of meditation, especially in the tantra tradition in this age, is all embracing of life, that everywhere is where we take that state and can have an impact. I mean, long before I started the Adam Carr Meditation Foundation, I was earlier on had been doing volunteer work in state and federal penitentiaries and teaching meditation practices in that venue. Because who was going in and doing that? They're people who need it as desperately, if not more so, than anybody else. So we find the places where we can walk Dharma into and share it. Share the gifts of that, of knowing that, of being able to experience that directly. And I certainly saw it in prisons and saw the changes in inmates who were horribly abused, both in prisons and typically they had a life of abuse, a life of trauma. We see that so often, that so many of the individuals who are so ready to inflict trauma on others have come out of such trauma, such profound trauma, such family trauma, such intergenerational trauma. It's one of the things that we see in the field of psychology as researchers expanded on that and the impact of trauma over generations that people need to get free of. And then seeing that, yes, even in that kind of situation, even in a prison, even in, concrete and steel, people could have the experience of real freedom. Because real freedom, that's inside. That's being free of others' projections and the conditioned mind. Think of that. Free of other people's projections and the conditioned mind. So that's why one inmate told me, who was serving life sentence without parole, because he had murdered somebody, right? And had spent he was only 32, he'd already spent 17 years in prison. And finally, after one program, he came up to me and he said, all my life I've been told what a horrible person I am, and I've certainly lived like that. He said, but now, through these practices, he began having these experiences, who he is, truly, free of the mind, free of other people's projections, and free of how his mind was conditioned into that sad, tragic state. And he said to me, the guards are still going to tell me what a screw-up I am, and what a piece of crap I am, and everything like that. But now I don't have to believe them, and I don't have to fight with them. I know the truth. I'll spend the rest of my life in prison. And he said, I deserve it. But I'm freer now than I ever was. Another inmate told me, I've changed so much because of these meditative practices and mantra and empowered mantra, that if the only way in my life for me to have received these things was to have been in prison, it was worth it. Think about that. Think about that. As we sit in the comfort of our homes, in our living rooms, what do we value? How do we remember what to value? How precious how precious it is to find a way to get free. And then be able to walk that freedom into the world through loving compassion, kindness, understanding, having the clarity of mind, because the mind is a tremendous instrument. So when it gets cleared of these conditions, we see things very clearly. We can see what went into, creating this tragic situation in politics, in the world. See the conditioned mind. Be able to see past that. See what it's going to take, and then dedicate ourselves to that. Give our resources to that. Support people who stand for that. It's all part of Dharma. It's all part of the Dharma, in fact, of being in a democracy. Democracy is a participatory practice. I remember my teacher, he had a replica of the Statue of Liberty built at the ashram, because he called her Swatantriya Devi, the goddess of absolute freedom. He said, this is the ideal, to be free, and then to welcome others into your embrace. That's what Statue of Liberty stood for. That's what America stood for. Not turning against immigrants. To welcome, loving embrace of that. To live from that knowledge and that sense of absolute abundance. You're not going to be diminished. You have more and more and more. Give more and more and more. Your fullness, that's what you want to know. Your fullness is boundless. So we don't have to get contracted and hoard. I pity these poor billionaires. Poor billionaires. Who would hoard like that when others are in such dire need? What a horrible state. What an impoverished state of mind they must live in. To be so into domination, exploitation, control, that they'd create misery for countless others, to have more than they could possibly use. So we gain that kind of clarity to be able to see. And then, whatever ways we're given in our everyday life, to be embodiments of loving compassion, kindness, patience. That's the way. That's what informs all our practice. Love, patience, compassion. These are the great practices, the great disciplines. So even if we're doing other practices like chanting mantra, we do it from love. We do it to know the source that gave birth to mantra. It gives birth to love beyond measure, moment by moment, an ocean of love. Mantra is a throb of that, a vibration of consciousness rooted in that. That's why we make use of mantra as a way of then going back into the source out of which mantra arose, out of which your mind arose, out of which your body arises. All arises one source. So we dissolve into that, keep coming back and go into that. And that's what we're going to do now for a few minutes. We're going to chant for a bit, and then we'll just sit in the stillness, in the silence. And if the mind is active, it's okay. You're not battling the mind. You're looking past the mind. That's the key. Don't get into a fight with your mind. Look past it. Look at what it really is. It's just fluctuations of consciousness, the power of Shakti, taking and dancing in different forms. And we shift our attention and bring it back to breath and mantra, because we go, oh, that's a form that dissolves us into the source. The ordinary mind just keeps us engaged in mind. And so we have that discrimination. We have that discernment. We say, oh, I don't have to keep going with mind. I'll get back to it later. But now I'm just going to set it aside. I'm just going to look past it and keep going. Oh, come back to mantra. Come back to Om Kalima. Om Kalima. Come back to Om Namah Shivaya. Om Namah Shivaya. Come back to Aham. Aham. Or Hum Sa. It's coming back to this throb of the infinite that is already vibrating within you. We do the practices with mind, body, speech to attune us to what's already arising, what's already present as this throb of the infinite dancing within. Always with its arms open to embrace you in all that you are, in profound love. That's the essence. It's letting go into that. It's very interesting that freedom comes from letting go. You don't produce freedom. You don't do freedom. You let go of all the things you got contracted about. All the things we got misidentified with. This thought, this feeling, this role, this conversation, this conflict, this other. Now we let it all go. And then freedom was right there all along. So ultimately we get to inhabit, abide in that state of freedom so that it can then inform the ordinary mind. Calm it down, set it free. So we keep running the experiences of that state through the mind and body, because that too then purifies them, means it eliminates these old contracted patterns, sets us free. Free for what? To know the fullness, the absolute fullness of the divine as all that is. To revel in the boundless ocean of love and compassion that embraces all. There's nothing better, nothing more sublime. And once we know that, that's all we want. So we'll chant now for a few minutes, and then we'll just sit in that stillness. Mother Cow Bhagavati Bhagavati Mahadevi Mata Kali Mahadevi Mata Kali Mahadevi Mata Kali Shiva Shiva Mahadeva Namah Shivaya Sadashiva 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 Om Shiva Om Shiva Om Mahadev Om Shiva Om Shiva Om Mahadev Jaya Shiva Jaya Shiva Jaya Shambho Jaya Shiva Jaya Shiva Jaya Shambho Om Shiva Om Shiva Om Mahadev Om Shiva Om Shiva Om Mahadev Jaya Shiva Jaya Shiva Jaya Shambho Jaya Shiva Jaya Shiva Jaya Shambho Om Shiva Om Shiva Om Mahadev Om Shiva Om Shiva Om Mahadev Jaya Shiva Jaya Shiva Jaya Shambho Jaya Shiva Jaya Shiva Jaya Shambho Om Shiva Om Shiva Om Mahadev Om Shiva Om Shiva Om Mahadev Jaya Shiva Jaya Shiva Jaya Shambho Jaya Shiva Jaya Shiva Jaya Shambho Om Shiva Om Shiva Om Mahadev Om Shiva Om Shiva Om Mahadev Jaya Shiva Jaya Shiva Jaya Shambho Jaya Shiva Jaya Shiva Jaya Shambho Jaya Shiva Jaya Shiva Jaya Shambho Shivo'ham 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 Chidananda Ropaha Shivo'ham Shivo'ham Chidananda Ropaha Shivo'ham 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 Chidananda Ropaha Shivo'ham Shivo'ham Chidananda Ropaha Shivo'ham Shivo'ham All is one, all is one, all is one Shivo'ham All is one, all is one, all is one Shivo'ham Chidananda Ropaha Shivo'ham Shivo'ham Chidananda Ropaha Shivo'ham 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 Shivo'ham, 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 Chidananda Rupaham, Shivo'ham, Shivo'ham, Chidananda Rupaham, Shivo'ham, Shivo'ham. Now I'm just resting in the stillness. Just watching. Shiva, the auspicious one, yourself, watches all that moves through the body, all that moves through the mind. And just watch. The mind moves. Let it move with Om Kalima or Om Namah Shivaya. All the while, the one watches with love and compassion, enfolding of its own creation as its own self within itself. It's you. All that is, all that has been, all that will come. You, the infinite, the divine, the one. We know ourselves, Chidananda Rupaha, in consciousness and bliss. Shivo'ham, Shivo'ham. I am the auspicious one. I am the auspicious one. The state of knowing is fully present here and now. Fully the truth of who you are at all times and all places. Keep coming home to that. Come home to the awareness. I am. Aham. Aham. The breath comes in silently with ah. Goes out silently with hum. Constantly proclaiming, I am. But it's the awareness of I am the infinite. I am the source of mind and body, of all minds, all bodies, all that is. Rest in that. Know that. Know true freedom. That's the state of true knowing. And we end with this prayer, that may all our practices truly benefit everyone, and may all beings know complete freedom from suffering. Namaste. All the practices aim at simply bringing us back to the truth of who we are, the truth of who we've always been, the truth of who we'll always be, the truth of who all beings are, the divine, the one. Knowing that, living that, breathing that, feeling that. Brings about the natural perfection of what this instrument is. The eyes to see the divine everywhere. The ears to hear the beloved. The touch to feel, to sense the living presence of the one. That's why we're here. Not knowing that, we substitute all the things that the ordinary mind engages in, the ordinary world and its myths of happiness coming through consumption, through power, through possessions. An empty, empty paradigm. These people flailing about in suffering, inflicting suffering on themselves and others endlessly. But we can break that cycle by coming home to the truth of who we are, just living that into the world, whatever ways our life gives us to do that. Transforms the mind. Right from when we wake up in the morning. Instead of the mind just engaging in its ordinary to-do list, its complaints, its whatever, it awakens to the beloved. Oh, my beloved. How many ways will you appear to me today? How might I serve you in this moment, and the next, and the next? That's what this vehicle was created for. To live in that rapturous dance with the beloved, moment by moment. Living out that love that embraces all. This is what we're called on. This is the great call of Kali Yuga. To dispel the darkness with the light of love. With being the living flame of love. That's already in your heart. Let it ignite the entire body. Let it inflame the mind. The fire of love. What else is there? What can compare to that? Don't be satisfied with the petty offerings of the world. You're called to so much more. You're capable of so much more. Be true to that. Be true to yourself, your highest self. Live that into the world. And that's why we created Anamkara 23 years ago, by the grace of the divine, to answer the call. The cries of suffering of all beings. Answer the call with love, with truth, with consciousness, with compassion. Empowered to walk and act in the world with that, to transform the world, our institutions, our governments, our relationships, our family patterns, all can be changed. You have the Shakti, the power to do that. Inhabit that power. Abide in that. Aham, I am. Hamsa, I am that. I am that. That's the truth. It's worth repeating in the mind. Not all the other things the mind says, I'm this, I'm that. No. I am that. Settle for nothing less. That's why we gather. That's why we have satsang. Satsang means keeping the company of the truth. Sat, that which is true at all times, in all places. A sangha, a group that embodies it. So thank you. Thank you for being ones doing that. In your own ways, in your own lives. Imbibing the practices. Imbibing the truth. Turning to it more and more frequently. More and more often. To abide in it. So thank you for being your divine selves and sharing that with the world. So once again, with all my heart, with all my love, I want to thank you for coming this evening and bringing your divine presence. Now I look forward to seeing you again in a couple of weeks.